In this video, we're going to talk about 5 different Japanese films that come from probably my favorite era of film. Perhaps someone else has a better name for this, but I have taken to calling it Millennial Asian Cinema, or even more specifically, Millennial Genre Films of Asia. These are Asian films, specifically Japanese films for this video, that were made during the early to mid-90s up until the late 2000s. This was a very special time for cinema, and we saw so much happen. Hong Kong had its hand over to the mainland, J-horror became a monster hit, South Korean cinema exploded, and many young people like myself at the time discovered the joys of Asian cinema. Unfortunately, it seems the further we get away from that era, the less it's talked about. But hey, no time like the present to focus on the greatness of this period, and hopefully at least a portion of you will find something that you've never heard of or something that will be of interest. With that said, let's talk about our first feature, Electric Dragon 80,000V. I believe Electric Dragon 80,000 Volts may be the most popular film on this list, at least as far as I know. Directed by the man once known as Sogo Ishii, this is his magnum opus in my opinion. He defined punk rock as a cinematic aesthetic, styles like Burst City and Crazy Thunder Road, and although this is not his most obscure title, I feel like if I'm going to talk about this director, this is the movie I want to talk about. Hitting like a dose of adrenaline, ED8V is a film all about pacing and aesthetics. The plot is kind of secondary as it details this ridiculous fable of Dragon Eye Morrison, played by the incomparable Tadanobu Asano. Morrison was subjected to electroshock therapy as a child to control his violent ways, and since then, he's developed the ability to charge electricity and harness its power. Meanwhile, Thunderbolt Buddha, played by Masatoshi Nagase, also suffered an electrical accident, and now he uses his powers as a vigilante. All of this is superfluous though, and what matters is the atmosphere, the music, and the vibe. The soundtrack provided by the band Mach 1.67, which is led by Sogo Ishii and Tadanobu Asano, is a punk rock industrial hellscape. This is something that might scare away some viewers if they're not open to that sort of thing. When the film first debuted, Ishii had special instructions that theaters must play the music as loud as possible, and the focus on sound is very present when watching the movie. This one has 2 speeds. The first is pure chaos and kinetic energy. The other speed is displayed in a series of laid-back scenes demonstrating a sort of cyberpunk cool. The black and white photography harkens back to Ishii's earlier days, and due to its cyberpunk stylings, also reminds viewers of Tetsuo the Iron Man and various other films from an earlier era. But despite its influences and the nostalgia it may bring to certain audiences, this is entirely a film of its own. ED8V is a mad scientist's experiment gone wrong. The film is exciting, but nothing happens. It's beautiful, but grimy and gritty. It's like a comic book, but the story is missing. The film defies all explanation and logic, and if you're up for something avant-garde and truly unique, Electric Dragon 80,000V is for you. Sharkskin Man and Peach Hip Girl. Katsuhito Ishii is one of those directors who doesn't get enough praise. I think just not enough people have seen his films. Those who are drawn to them tend to be the stuffy art house types, still waxing philosophical about the Art Theater Guild of the 1980s. Unfortunately, Ishii has more of a mainstream aesthetic in many of his films. This is probably why his first 2 features, Party 7 and Sharkskin Man and Peach Hip Girl, tend to be overlooked in a lot of ways. His third title, A Taste of Tea, is a more methodically paced film that is pretty well beloved by the art house community. This has led to a lot more popularity and praise, but if you ask me, it's not nearly as much fun as this particular movie. The plot for Sharkskin Man and Peach Hip Girl is as follows. Tadanobu Asano plays a Yakuza who has stolen from his boss, which has landed him in a great deal of hot water. Toshiko, played by Shii Kohinata, is also on the run from her perverted uncle. The two become ensnared in the same chase and they make a run for it together. This is a movie made in the heyday of Tarantino ripoffs, which are definitely an acquired taste. Look, I count Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead as one of my favorite crime films, so that's where I sit.
All drinks? All drinks, Jimmy.
I loved so many of these films from that era, and although Ishii's film isn't exactly brimming with the idiosyncratic choices that you might see in something like Things to Do in Denver or Boondock Saints, like, I don't think the dialogue in Sharkskin Man is the main selling point for the movie, but it does have that pulp feel that Tarantino's 90s work had. It has the adoration for style that made the 90s grand. Released around the same time Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, Guy Ritchie's film, it had a very similar sense of overdosing on style. Ishii wants to pack his film with as much frenetic energy as he can. He wants to coat the screen with style while crafting this modern, body-inclined story. Based on a manga, it really shows in every frame of the movie. The costumes, with any other director during this period, would be toned down from the books. Instead, Ishii tries to make his Yakuza characters even more over the top. Nearly every character who shares screen time in the film is either hilarious or attempts to be an over-the-top sort of cool. For example, near the beginning of the film, we're introduced to the people who are chasing Asano's character. One of these guys is a white-haired, pimpish-looking fella who has one outrageous introduction. It's just cool little things like that sets Sharkskin Man apart from other films. This is what entertaining cinema should be. Outlandish colors, dripping with cool, oozing with style. The music's incredible, the characters are lovable. This is a movie that needs a little more love. The City of Lost Souls. Takashi Miike is a big-time director from Japan, yes, but in his huge library, he had a litany of great films that are just criminally overlooked. City of Lost Souls is certainly one of those. When his filmography was mostly known for Audition and Dead or Alive, City of Lost Souls stood out as just another great and bizarre film from this new maverick director. However, as his filmography continued to grow, City of Lost Souls was sort of left behind. A surreal crime film, City of Lost Souls is less transgressive than the crime film parody that was Dead or Alive, but not as bleakly serious as some of his other lower-budget Yakuza pictures from the same era. The plot follows Mario, played by a gentleman known as Tay, a Brazilian tough guy with only one love in life, and that is Kay, played by Michelle Reyes. Kay, who is Chinese, is rescued by Mario after almost being deported. After the daring rescue, the two take refuge in the Japanese underworld, where they encounter powerful Chinese syndicates, traditional Yakuza groups, and a series of Brazilian gangsters who are also lying low. Being that the two have no passport, they have to attain a boat to leave Japan to continue their lives. But this isn't going to be easy. To afford the boat, they'll team up with a bar-owning friend as well as a local roughneck in order to steal a large amount of cash from a drug deal between the Chinese syndicate and the Yakuza. Things, as you may guess, go awry. City of Lost Souls sets its pace early, with the first 10 minutes comprised of a sequence where we watch our lead character walk into a Brazilian bar, shoot everyone inside, and then walk outside stripped nude while dust clouds blow all around him. It's our jumping off point for this strange and wholly entertaining story. It's a film about the journey, and although the characters don't physically travel very far in the film, the assorted characters they meet along the way certainly gives it a feeling of being a road movie. If you need only one reason to see this though, I guess the CGI chickens would have to do. During this early part of his career, Miike frequently showed an interest in foreign influences within Japan. Dead or Alive had its focus on the Chinese gangsters in that film. Miike loves focusing on outsiders within society, and these foreigners were some of his favorites. Blues Harp is another film, with its main protagonist being biracial, also being an outsider because of this fact. City of Lost Souls features a cast of nothing but outsiders. Brazilian, Chinese, and Japanese criminals all facing off in a world that seemingly has no use for them. The film is actually based upon a book, and although I would imagine the conflict between different ethnic groups is in there, I tend to wonder what all Miike brought to the film. I have a hard time picturing how a book might describe a scene where we see two characters jump out of a helicopter hundreds of feet in the air, only to land in a back alley totally unscathed. Miike runs amok with the style in the film. He nearly always keeps the pace moving at breakneck speeds, but he doesn't shy away from slowing things down when absolutely necessary, or when it might contribute to the stylish nature of the film. And what is probably the biggest technical achievement of the film, we get one incredibly long and complex crane shot. Starting inside of a restaurant, we follow the man inside as he goes from the front desk to the outside of the building in a mannerly fashion. This already was quite impressive in my eyes, but once the camera is outside, we just sit patiently as we listen to a voiceover monologue from Tae, Michelle Reyes, and Atsushi Okuno as Carlos. Two drunk women sit on the sidewalk and we watch as a bicycle passes us. At this point, the camera begins to levitate. Up until the camera started to float, I didn't even know it was a crane shot. The crane takes the camera up to the second floor, where we reveal our three actors going over the monologue we've been hearing in voiceover the whole time. It's not the most amazing long take you'll ever see, of course, but after it's over, you may think to yourself, how in the world did they squeeze that into this film? In the same film where we watch two CGI chickens have a Matrix-style fight sequence, we are given a beautifully orchestrated cinematic dance such as this. Gonin. Earlier, I brought up things to do in Denver when you're dead.
All drinks. All drinks, Jimmy.
And if by chance you're familiar with that film, then I'd like to introduce you to its more methodical and intricately paced cousin. Directed by Takashi Ishii, the film follows 5 men who are all down on their luck. They decide that together, they have the wits about them to pull off a heist and rob the Yakuza, and then get away with it. Unfortunately, as you might expect, things go poorly and the group ends up leaving behind a trail that leads the mob directly to them. The Yakuza then sends out their most ruthless hitman, played incredibly by Takeshi Kitano, almost immediately after his motorbike accident that impacted so much of his career. During the film, you'll see him wearing an eye patch, which is well known was in place because his eye socket was actually leaking fluid. Gonin is another title that I would call a common title, but has sort of been left behind throughout the years, but is again waiting to be rediscovered by new audiences. Director Takashi Ishii is a legend within the world of Japanese film. The man who originated the manga that the Angel Guts series was based upon, and who directed one of the best entries in that series, as well as wrote the second feature. He directed the remake of Flower and Snake and produced so many other memorable titles. He's a filmmaker and artist that we lost only recently in 2022. And I rewatched this film and I think how much I wish he were still here so we could pick his brain about these films and his various ideas. Gonin features a plot very similar to the aforementioned Things to Do in Denver, but both films were released around the same time and do things drastically different in terms of execution. Gonin rarely ever gives you false hope. The film is bleak and chock full of existential dread. Death is coming for these characters and it's just a matter of when. Still, even when knowing that things are possibly hopeless, the film stands out as being touching and heartfelt. It's a beautiful picture and should probably sit high on the list of greatest crime films of the 1990s. Takashi Ishii gives the film an urban feeling with a gritty sense of realism. The lighting is garish and the characters are repulsive but endearing, and the film sucks you in. Ishii takes the existential dread of Kitano's films, but gives a force and a name to what may bring about the demise of our heroes. The violence within the film has impact and the characters have meaning, which makes seeing violence brought upon them all the more painful and all the harder to look away from. In the past, I've seen Gonin referred to as being needlessly cruel and just plain mean. Like a rabid dog, Gonin is most definitely a mean film. I won't argue that, but at its heart it cares about its characters. I never found anything in the film to be excessive. Sure, you don't like seeing these somewhat decent men treated in such a way, but that's part of the experience. It produces a reaction every time you watch it. It's a work of honest emotion. It hits its audience with intensity, but doesn't forget that they need to be entertained. There are comparisons that could be made to Takeshi Kitano's films, but when it comes to his displaying Yakuza characters, he's often sentimental to their plight. He shows them as arrogant children, but he lets them remain human. Ishii removes all humanity from these characters. These are men who kill, torture, and maim to get what they want. They may be children, but they're violent children. This is why they're so menacing. The leads that are provided may not be the most perfect of individuals, but we know we don't want them to fall into the hands of these beasts that are hunting them. The performances in the film are grand. The cast are tremendous. Takeshi Kitano plays one of the most menacing killers in all of cinema. There's a love story component to the film, portraying a homosexual love story that was incredibly ahead of its time, and honestly, I haven't even scratched the surface of what makes Gonin so special. Seek it out, and also its 2 sequels as well. Onibi, The Fire Within. Onibi, The Fire Within follows Noriyuki Kunihiro, played by Yoshio Harada, an old-school Yakuza who is recently released from prison. He has a reputation for being a bit of a loose cannon, a general powder keg just waiting to explode at any moment. It seems that Kunihiro's time in the joint has helped to relax his soul, and now that he's out, he wants nothing more than a peaceful existence in mainstream society. This new peaceful mentality, of course, does not last long. An old Yakuza acquaintance, Naoto Tanagawa, played by Sho Aikawa, shows back up in Kunihiro's life and asks him to come work for his gang. Kunihiro explains his desperation to keep away from that side of life, but having no real way of earning any money, he's forced eventually to take a job as a driver for this gang. This of course leads to a slide back into that particular lifestyle. Ultimately, as he gets more and more involved in this criminal outfit, his own nature will prove to be his greatest enemy. Rokuro Mochizuki is the director of Onibi, and he's virtually unheard of here in the West. Arts Magic released several of his films on DVD in the early 2000s, including Onibi, Another Lonely Hitman, Mobster's Confessions, and A Yakuza in Love. Not as well known of a fact at that time was that Mochizuki was one of those directors who spent half their career in the mainstream and the other half making hardcore adult films. Art house Yakuza pictures, unfortunately, don't always pay the bills. Proof that, once again, life isn't fair. Mochizuki's films are deliberately paced, but can feature very familiar genre settings. This, of course, makes his work seem very similar to that of Takeshi Kitano, but he is an artist who definitely has his own voice. Mochizuki keeps the structure of a generic crime film, but fills it with texture, angst, and depth. Onibi is perhaps the most obtuse work that I've seen from him, filled with ideals based around sexuality and isolationism, yet despite how obtuse it might be, it's all there for an attentive audience member who cares to search for it. There's a feeling of complete control within Mochizuki's work. A solemn hand holds the film, even when the plot delves heavily into violent mayhem. Yet despite the violence, Onibi also delivers a high level of comedy throughout the course of the film. This isn't a broad sort of comedy, it doesn't rely on the childish acts of grown men that you might see in other Yakuza pictures. Rather, it focuses on a more subtle, character-driven sense of humor, like seeing Kunihiro walk into a Yakuza office as the great hitman we hear so much about, only to shrink away when a gun is pointed at him. But what really makes the scene comedic is that moments later he's pointing the very same gun at the boss of the establishment. It's a heroic moment, but Kunihiro just doesn't fit that mold. The moments between he and his girlfriend are also usually filled with comedic pieces here and there, but Kunihiro himself has a very nice comic edge throughout at least the first half of the film. It isn't the sort of movie, with its relaxed pace and lack of skirmishes, to really demand a lot of kinetic visual imagery, but there is certainly a dreamlike and slightly surreal quality to the film. The writer credited with the film is Toshiyuki Morioka, known for Blues Harp, Fudo, The New Generation, Chinpira, etc. He's an author who has a great pedigree behind his name. Blues Harp, mentioned earlier, shares a very similar sense of pacing with Onibi. So combining both Mochizuki and Morioka's sensibilities seems to have been a rather easy fit. The cast, of course, is a fairly prominent one, centering around the genre staple and always interesting Yoshio Harada. He gives a strong performance as Kunihiro, who is quite complex despite his ruggedness. Harada creates a character that is more quirky than he is fearsome, and who seems more introverted than deadly. Yet his past always remains believable because there's something underneath the character. It's not a tangible quality, but there's a mystery that surrounds this character that leaves the audience questioning him at all times. Then there's the other big name, the one that probably sold the US distribution rights, Sho Aikawa. Sho plays a small part, really, as Kunihiro's go-to man, but he still manages to craft a poetic character that, by the end of the film, has fleshed himself out into something totally unexpected. Rokuro Mochizuki is a filmmaker who deserves far more acclaim in the West than he ever received, but I still hold out hope that he will one day find his place in the sun. If there are any problems with Onibi in particular, it might be in its pacing. The words subtle, nuanced, and deliberately paced are all accurate descriptions of the sometimes glacial speed at which the film progresses. Some audiences will likely find the movie to be a bit too soft for what they are looking for in a Yakuza tale. This isn't Takashi Miike or Kenji Fukasaku, not even Takeshi Kitano. Mochizuki creates his own living space in the Yakuza genre. Although he uses a frame based upon the most base genre conventions, this is a movie that is very concerned with its characters and a universal view of what binds human beings. A romantic art house crime film that sticks to its genre conventions, Onibi the Fire Within remains unique despite what it borrows from the genre. So that does it for this video. I'm currently hard at work on my next project. I guess I'll spill the beans here. It'll be a huge piece on Italian cannibal films. So I hope you all tune in and keep supporting the channel. And if you're not already, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And let's get this channel's subscriber count over 1,000. Thanks again, you guys, and we'll see you again real soon.